I'm Zach Hinkle, owner of Hinkle Hardscapes, and this is Tom Harvey and Ken Gibson, and we're going to visit with you today on why Hinkle Hardscapes.
You want to know about some of the problems and issues we run into?
Yeah, I mean, for a prospective customer, and they ask why us over somebody else, why?
I had a customer the other day who was having a hard time getting bids back from the other contractors they had requested bids from.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them taking 3-4 weeks to get a bid returned to them.
Wow.
But one of the things I like to do is make sure, one, after we meet with you and we've got a good idea of your vision, get a bid returned to you within 24 to 48 hours. That way you're seeing exactly what we just talked about, what that's going to cost, and start tailoring it to what you need. If it takes 3 to 4 weeks to get a plan, the initial plan, if you need adjustments, tweaks, modifications to that plan, it could take another 3 or 4 weeks. So,
right.
I think whatever we can do to expedite the process, get plans to them as quick as possible is an asset for us.
So how soon should somebody expect a bid back from us, from Hinkle?
From us, you're going to get it within 48 hours.
Within 48 hours.
I think it's realistic to expect, I think the rest of the industry, most contractors seem to turn bids around within 2 weeks or so, but we want to make sure once we've covered your vision, gone over everything, that we're going to get that plan back to you right away so we can start. Like I said, there's always adjustments, tweaks, modifications that we need to make to tailor it exactly to what your vision is, the client's vision is for the project.
One of the questions that comes up a lot is, and especially when I'm running a meeting, it's like, how long have you guys been doing this?
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's a good question.
That is a good question.
There's a lot of new contractors out there in the industry. And there's a lot of contractors out there in general. It can overwhelm people, I think, trying to figure out who's the best contractor, who's the best fit for their job. One thing that we like to tell people and we market is that we do hardscapes. That's our niche, that's our forte. Softscapes, landscaping, that's a different animal. Hardscapes is really what we do and we excel at. But I think it's important that people, clients, look at the years of experience a contractor has. How many years have they been in business?
We're actually going on our 10th year.
Congratulations.
10 years. We started July of 2007, so as we pull into 2017, this will be our 10th year in business.
Awesome.
So under the same management, and
I think that's something that gives me a lot of confidence in the field, because as a designer, salesperson, and I've sold a few things in my lifetime. I've been around the block a few times, if you will. And to be in the field and know that the team that backs me up is going to do a great job is so important to me. I think that being in this long enough to see some projects completed and the notes that come back about our crews, almost everyone that we work for says something about how fantastic our crews are. So I know when I'm on the first call with somebody that I'm talking to somebody about a patio that's going to be installed the right way, and it's going to be in great shape 10 years from now, 15 years from now, because of the quality work that our guys do.
Yeah.
And I think we can actually tell people too, I've been in business for 10 years, so,
we're going to be there.
We're going to be there
10 years
5 to 10 years down
right?
the road to actually help you if something does go wrong with your patio. So I think that speaks a lot.
Yeah, that kind of speaks to that whole warranty thing. If a company that's been around for 6 months gives you a 10-year warranty, that doesn't really have a lot of weight behind it.
Somebody once said your warranty is only as good as you've been in business for.
Sure,
so,
exactly.
Right. Yeah.
So
that's a good point.
That's a good point. One of the things that also I get asked when I'm at an appointment is how do you make sure our design is functional, make sure it's the right size, make sure it fits with drainage, with slope of the yard, make sure stairs and all those things go into take consideration for the design that we're going to develop for somebody. And I just get asked a lot, like, how do you guys know what you're doing?
Right. Well, and background, I guess, is the first thing, and I've got a degree as a landscape architect, and I've been designing hardscapes, outdoor living environments. I've been designing for 13 years now, 14 years. So design's, not only is it a background degree wise, but it's also my passion too. But one of the things that I like to help our clients out with is making sure they avoid design pitfalls. Stuff that with the design could could create issues on their patio. You know, it's one of the most common things that I see with other contractors' design stuff like that. You know, grill station placement right up next to the house. You know, that's something I see. You don't want your grill up next to the house. You know, it's one. It's one of those things that can really ruin your siding, that kind of stuff.
Sure.
Just thinking about it, but the heat source next to your house, not good. But spatially too, one of the biggest keys that I've seen to creating a successful outdoor living environment is circulation. You know, how do people use the space? How do they get around on the patio? You know, you don't want circulation to be blocked, obstructed by elements that you place on the patio, and you got to make the patio the right size to experience it the way that you want to experience it, and entertain the way you want to entertain. Because ultimately, we're creating a space that a lot of people entertain with. You know, so getting the expectations from the client of how many people do they plan to entertain? How do you entertain? You know, how do you see using the space is critical.
I think that's the key point. Is we need to ask a lot of questions to the homeowner when we're on that first appointment. Is how are you going to use? How do you envision using this space? And then start to make a design that fits that vision.
Yeah, I agree.
And then we also want to make sure that there's no trees or any obstructions.
You hit on earlier slope and you know the conditions of the existing site. You know that slope plays a major factor. Not only with proper drainage for a patio, which you know the lack of drainage on a patio can really ruin a patio over time.
And that's what ruins it. Drainage is the number one reason.
Drainage is huge.
It's the reason a hardscape project will fail.
Yeah. So that's drainage is something. I mean, you can probably speak to this, but we've been talking about the crews drainage.
Oh,
I mean,
yes.
Yes. First and foremost, when we get out, lay out the project. Beyond what you and I have already seen as designers, is let's make sure we can make that design drain properly when we're actually shooting grades, elevations, that kind of thing.
Yep.
But slope and site improvements, a lot of times I've seen is overlooked by other contractors in their bid typically.
Right.
How do they address the slope? You know, how are they accounting for the grade change here? Something's going to have to be done. Typically, a lot of times, if the bid isn't done correctly, unfortunately, the client may have to see raise in price during construction. You know, going back asking for more money to address some of these slope and site issues.
Yep.
Which is what we want to avoid. You know, and I think our track record speaks for that. I can't think of a single project we've had where we've had to go back and ask for more money from a client based on a design flaw or anything like that.
And that just goes back to the experience of the company and the crews in the field and Zach, because so many businesses are started by people who worked somewhere else and learned the business, went out on their own, thought they could do it. And honestly, we learn everything from our experiences.
Yeah.
So 10 years and 3,000 jobs is how he's got this encyclopedia of knowledge about all these different things that could happen.
Right.
And somebody who's been out there for 6 months or a year just can't, it's impossible.
Yeah.
You can't know that much.
Right. Well, even if they've been in business a couple of years, I mean, there's just too many things you can. Each site is different. Every time we look at a site, it's drastically different than the one before. So each one has to be addressed design-wise differently, uniquely, and then of course construction-wise, how we're going to build it. Each one's a little different.
Yeah. And it's not like that. I wasn't working for another hardscaping company and decided to, you know, take their model and go start my own business. I started in the ground. I actually started with 2 employees that I actually employ today building these. So
Your first 2 guys are still with you.
yeah,
That's awesome.
The crews are fantastic, and that's one of the things too. And I think we hit on it earlier, but having the confidence when I'm talking with the client and designing a project and bidding, knowing that the crews are going to deliver.
That's huge.
It is.
And it doesn't matter what you're selling.
Yeah.
no,
It doesn't matter what you're selling. If you are supremely confident in your product or service, it makes the whole sales process so much easier.
does.
And I know for a fact that when people, if they choose us, if we're lucky enough to be their contractor, that when it's all said and done, they're gonna be happy.
Yeah.
Because of the guys.
Yeah,
You know?
that's right. And nothing's perfect too. Another thing that I like, the confidence I have in Zach as the owner, to stand by his work. I've seen it before, you know, where something happens, you know, whether we get a freak storm, whatever during construction, stuff happens sometimes.
Right.
But to have the integrity to stand by that work and say we're going to get it right gives me peace of mind knowing that again, we're not going to go back and hit you up with extra money to get this problem fixed. This is something that happened, whether it was out of our control or not. We're going to make sure you get a good product at the end of the day.
Right.
Great.
and that's what's kept us in business for 10 years. So that exact model right there. So
Referrals.
Referrals.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, I think it's important that you, as the owner of this business, and now the guy that oversees the projects, it's important that you spent time in the field building these things.
Yeah,
And you
that's,
know-
that's imperative.
Yeah.
If you're going to be a production manager, which
Right.
you are as well, which
Right.
is another nice asset to what we do, is
Yeah.
you're getting the owner of the company who's also the production manager out there overseeing the jobs. But you have to have that experience to be able to properly run a project.
Yeah, thank goodness I don't build the patios. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's-
But now it's being able to make our jobs easier, especially as being, overseeing the projects from a standpoint of start to finish, is these guys have been doing it for 10 years.
Right.
Right.
I mean, these guys allow us to get the company to the next level
Yeah.
and to be able to do the things we're doing. If it wasn't for them, staying with us for that long,
Yeah.
we would not be in the
Yeah.
position we're in.
Plus
So-
you got all these guys in the field now who have seen so many things.
Oh.
So they get to the job site,
Yeah.
they recognize
They're
problems.
hitting the ground running,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah,
They
and
recognize
adjusting,
things
yeah.
right off the bat that maybe need to be addressed.
Yeah.
Oh.
Stuff like that. There's
And they're
no
probably even better than I am at that now. I mean, I started building
Right.
these with them, but as we've progressed and grown, I've came out of building them, and now I kind of oversee them and have to oversee the company. So really, I mean, these guys have been doing it for probably longer than I have at this
Yeah.
point, on a day-to-day basis.
Well, and they definitely got the capability to run projects with or without your assistant.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
At this point, I mean, when Jose and Javier first started with me, their English was, I mean, it was choppy. We could talk back and forth to each other, but communication was a little off. And I get asked that. I've gotten asked that quite a few times. Who's going to be doing this?
Sure, yeah, I get that question too.
Do they speak English? And
Well, you want to know, you want to have confidence in the people working in your backyard. That
Right.
one, you're able to communicate with them if you need to.
Sure.
I mean, I think you can speak to it now, but we've got most of our crew foremen are fluent.
Oh, yeah,
all of
they
them are
are.
fluent now,
Yes.
actually. So
Yeah, I was just going to point to the fact that the two that started with us, their English was choppy, and now they are full on English to now speaking fluently in English. So it's
yeah. Now, one other thing I was going to ask you too. What are some of in your 10 years experience doing this?
Mhm.
What are some of the construction practices that you've seen we do differently than other contractors that would be beneficial to our clients?
Well, we have that's a good question. We have a really dense clay in this area. It expands and contracts with moisture or lack thereof. So,
Swells in May and then shrinks in the summer heat.
yeah. So when we first started doing patios back in 08, 07, we were doing them using a compactor and AB3 base. In my opinion, with our dense clay, or not my opinion, with my experience with compacting AB3 and our dense clay and then expansion and contraction of that has been not practical. We started doing jobs for the municipalities around town, and when working with their engineers, they were like, we're pouring concrete.
Yeah.
We understand the soils in this area. We know what happens when you use AB3.
Right.
So we are going to pour concrete base, and you're going to put the pavers on top of them. And while that kind of went against what I was taught in the beginning, it made sense to me.
And it's, I mean, I can speak from experience too. It's imperative to have a concrete base now for any paver project you're going to do in these clay soils. If you don't want to see the patio settle,
Right.
or what we call walking, everyone's probably seen it before. They've seen a paver patio. That
We've
just
all
has,
been to somebody's house
Yeah.
that's got a paver patio.
It's got the
or
waves in it. It's
the
got grass growing through it.
Yeah.
Right. So this is, I mean, concrete's the way to go to prevent any of that and promote longevity of your patio. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
You're making a big investment in this project. It's something you want to be proud of within 2 years.
Oh, yeah.
Some of these patios I've seen, I've been on jobs where we've been called back in within a year of the client putting in the patio
Yeah.
to actually fix it because it is settled and shifted, moved
Yeah.
with an AB3. And again, AB3, just the crushed aggregate that's compacted
It's
in there
compacted.
versus concrete.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sad because they've made a big investment. It's not cheap. It's not too much cheaper to build a patio on AB3. So you've made a big investment.
Yeah.
Now you've seen it fail within a year or two.
Right.
How do you address that? That one's tough for me because
Yeah.
Sadly, the only answer to that is to take it out,
take it out and redo
put a
it.
concrete base down and redo the patio to really get it properly.
You know, oftentimes I get too on an appointment, I don't know if you guys get this as well, but people say, well, you know, we're okay with AB3 base and we're okay with it moving because then we can fix it easier. And to me, that's just backwards. Why don't we just do this once?
Right.
Let's do the concrete base. Let's pour it with concrete. Let's put the pavers on top of it. Let's not have to worry about redoing it again.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I try to instill in them. And the reason why I took our paver warranty to a 5-year warranty is because I've been installing pavers on concrete bases since 2011, which is now longer than 5 years, and I haven't had no callbacks.
Right.
No callbacks. So I'm gonna.
Are we the only ones doing a 5-year right now?
I think so.
So
But I'm the only one that can actually say I've been installing them on concrete for 5 years, which is why I put the 5-year warranty in place.
Right.
And I haven't had any callbacks. So.
Right. Well, it is. There's a lot of information out there that you jump on the internet and you can find information about how to build a paver patio, and the information is showing an AB3 base a lot of times.
Yeah. Right.
And that's not necessarily incorrect, but it's incorrect for our soils. I mean,
Right.
if you go to Florida where you got a sandy base, that's going to work just fine, and you're going to have success with it down there. But in the clay soils, is what I'm hearing. I mean, it's imperative to get a concrete base down if you don't want to see any settling and have issues. Have to come back and repair your patio within 2 years, kind of a deal.
One of the things I want to touch on too, it's very important when installing one of these. In fact, it's probably the most important thing to look at. And again, that's slope improvement or drainage. Hardscapes longevity, the longevity of a hardscape is basically based off of drainage. The patio has to drain. We can't have water staining on the patio. We can't have water eroding underneath it. All of those elements go into actually having us, with the experience, going into actually the design phases of it to make sure that it's going to be functional. Sometimes we see things that, you know, a homeowner wants to have happen, but maybe we think it can happen that way, or we can get close, but the functionality of it and the longevity of it may need to be, you know, kind of worked a little bit to make it fit what they want, as you know, and then if we build it to make sure it's going to last long. So, you know, that's one thing that I always touch on. Drainage is, in fact, when you come to work here, that's what I start talking to you the first day, is that right there has to drain.
Right.
That's the only way this thing's going to last long.
Right.
So I think it's overlooked by a lot of contractors.
Oh, it absolutely is. I mean, there's the most common thing that I see with it is when you've got a house, a backyard. I mean, most of the time we're working in backyards. Coming out of the backyard, you've got a slope that comes down to the house. You know, where they've usually got a swale in there in the backyard, and right now it's carrying the water away just fine. But when you're introducing a hardscape element now, we're now adding water coming off the house down to that swale, water coming off the hillside, increase the volume of water in there. How does that get handled? Because like you're saying with undercutting and everything, if you've got a major rain event and that swale's full and it's running right along the edge of your patio, you're going to have undercutting issues and down the road with that patio failing.
Yeah.
Some of it's, you know, rerouting drainage, some of it's putting in a French drain, but a lot of times if you ask a client, you know, if they've had other contractors out here, how they were planning to address it, it wasn't even something that was addressed.
Right.
And that's where you're going to run into issues is, you know, we can put the patio there and it looks great right now, but as soon as you get that first big rain event, what's going to happen? And understanding the processes of how water can ruin a patio. You know, grading on a patio too is something I've seen a lot of, where we've been out to look at a patio that water sits on. You know, everyone's seen it, the water stains. You've got an edge of the patio somewhere where water's just not getting off of it too. That goes to the detail of the craftsmanship of your crew. Somebody who's floating that out isn't getting the right grade set on that, and created bird baths, what we call them, where water just sits there. Or, haven't allowed for how to get water off a patio, trapping it there, kind of thing.
A lot of people don't know that the ASTM standard for drainage on a patio is 1/4 inch per foot. So if you take 20 feet, you know, our average patio is 20 by 20, let's say, that patio has to drop 4 or 5 inches.
Right.
So a lot of people don't take that in consideration, and they try to cheat it, or they don't think about it, and then during construction they find out that actually the grade is now higher than the patio,
Right.
where it needs to drain, and that creates issues, and then they don't have money in the bid to fix that. So, you know, a lot of those we take into consideration at the beginning. So,
Right.
a lot of people don't think their patio is 4 or 5, has to drain 4 or 5 inches to shed the water, but and in fact, when that's 20 feet out, 21 feet out, it is 4 or 5 inches that needs to slope.
Right.
So,
Right. One of the other things you were talking about too the other day with the crew, we bring plywood to every job, and we put plywood down from the street back to the job site. Have you seen other construction methods? I mean, that always seemed like the logical reason, why we do it, to keep the yard from getting ruts and stuff. But I mean, are other people doing something different?
yeah, I've seen bobcat tracks going through a yard. I've seen I've seen not using plywood at all. We've seen it all. I mean, the thing that I thought about, especially when I started the company, was, if I'm going to go build something beautiful for somebody in their backyard, then I need to take care of my tracks in and out.
Right.
And a lot of people don't think about that.
It can be unsightly.
It can be, and a lot, those tracks in the yard,
Yeah.
they can stay there. I've seen them there for up to 1 to 2 years.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not something it's not an easy fix.
Right. Or you're gonna have to put more money into it
Yeah.
after the fact. Yeah.
Right. So, for any pool or for any patio job that we are doing, where we're putting in a patio, we use 2 pieces of equipment that will fit on an 8-foot. We can use the 8-foot side of the plywood, which means we don't have to carry a ton of plywood to the job site, but we carry enough to get it from the street to the backyard and to the area where we're working. Now, obviously, if we're doing a pool project, we need bigger equipment. We'll include a haul road and repair for that.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, just our
Yeah,
patio packages.
For a standard patio, it's kind of cool. I mean, you put the plywood down, literally after you were done, pull that plywood back up, and you'll see that grass respawn right back within a couple days.
Oh yeah.
And then within a week, it doesn't even look like there was ever plywood put down there.
No, I'm amazed at some of the larger projects we've been able to do. And
Yeah.
we go back to take
No
pictures,
damage,
or I
yeah.
go to meet with them. It's like I can't even tell where we went in.
Right. Right. Yeah.
The other thing we do is we use dumpsters. We started using
Yeah.
dumpsters a year and a half ago. It does add a little bit of cost to our job site, but it keeps them clean.
Right.
We want to move quickly when we get started on your project. We don't want to take half of a day or half of a cruise day, with a dump trailer, making trips to wherever a dump site, to dispose of your stuff. We want to get in, get out. So, I understand that we are a seasonal business, and I know that we can run into rain delays. So my thought was to set the crews up to be as efficient as possible. So we use dumpsters, which allows us to move the material quickly off of your property and get rid of it, not have our crew driving that back and forth.
Yeah.
So we put all of our spoils in a dumpster. It does cost a little bit more, but we're a little bit more efficient. We can get in and out quicker.
Yeah.
For the most part, when we start a job, we are there from start to finish.
Right.
So some people ask me, are you going to start my job and then be working 2 other ones at the same time?
Sure.
The answer is no. However, when we pour concrete or we have a very large pour, I use 2 crews to pour.
Yeah.
So sometimes your crew might leave for a couple hours to go help another crew pour, but they'll be right back.
Yeah.
So that's the question that I'm asked a lot.
Yeah.
But we want to make sure when we're pouring concrete, whether it's stamped or whether it's a paver base, that everything is level. And so it takes more labor to make sure that happens.
Well, maybe I don't know if we're supposed to go into this, but I think that speaks to, maybe I should start over, let me rephrase it. I typically find when I'm talking with clients that we're not the cheapest contractor out there, primarily because of a lot of what we're talking about here, our construction practices. To keep a job site clean and to run a job efficiently, it costs a little bit more.
Yeah.
But I think the peace of mind that we can give to our clients of knowing, one, when we bid a job and we started, you're not going to get hit with any other fees. There's nothing like, hey, we didn't take this into account, so we need to add a wall here. It's going to be another $2,000. That was our fault, but hey, now you're stuck with the bill, kind of a deal. What the design and the bid that we put together for people is what we implement. It's what we build, and it gets done for that fee. A lot of times, like you're saying, a lot of these contractors might be lower or cheaper on the front end, but there could be some things in there in the bid.
There could be some change orders through the
change
process.
orders.
Some things
you
were
wanted
overlooked.
you wanted a border on this patio. I didn't know that. That's another $300 for the border.
Right.
Whatever it is, which is why I think it's always good for a client to get other bids and look at other options. but to know exactly what you're getting, ask the right questions. That's what we're here to help them with as a designer too, to make sure they understand exactly what they're getting. And even like I said, if we can look at another bid that they're considering, we'd be happy to help go through that.
Oh, yeah.
Just to see if it's apples to apples. Make sure you know what you're getting. If our prices are different, we've had many times I've called you up and I said, you know, we are bidding apples to apples. We're a few $100s more. Can we get that down just because we want to earn the business? We know the project's a good fit for us, and that ultimately the client's going to have a great experience throughout the construction process with Hinkle. Some of the Google reviews they're awesome.
People are almost
that's
what, 45 of them
That's
now?
one of my favorite things is after a project to go back and see what my clients said about the job and just their glowing response to one, how great the crew is on site. I get that all the time. I love seeing that. But to know that the positive feedback is out there, you know, it's the experience they've had with the construction process, which can be the most frightening for a client, but the actual construction process goes smooth, it goes great. They're happy with the end result. I think that speaks volumes.
Yeah.
So
Check
out the Google reviews.
When you own a business, nobody ever tells you you're doing a good job. So it's good for me to see that. You know, there's 45 people that went out there and took their own time to fill out those things. They didn't have to. It's just they were happy about the process and the experience they had.
The most common thing you usually see is people only leave feedback when it's negative.
Right.
You know, so it's great to see that our clients are actually going out there and glowing about
That's
the process.
huge. And also these video testimonials that people are doing, aren't those great?
Those are cool. Those are really cool.
That's another good.
Shout out to our marketing crew on that.
Yeah.
Nice work behind the camera back there, guys.
One thing I want to go back to that rates being too expensive, and I hear that sometimes, and then, you know, it just goes back to the experience level. You know, I've been on projects since 2007. I've been tracking how long these projects take since 2007. I've got a pretty good idea what it takes to do a job. Labor-wise, what it takes to do a job. We're all selling the same materials.
Right.
I mean, but I know how long it takes, and I know, our overhead's not ridiculous. I run a pretty tight organization as far as that's concerned. I try to automate a lot of things within our systems and processes, but you know, it comes back to the experience. You know, we've been around for 10 years. I know how long things take. I know where we've been successful. I know where we haven't been successful. I've replaced a lot of things learning, you know, through the process. We've left some things out that I just took care of. I've learned our work. If I did something wrong, I go back and fix it. We've got equipment to take care of. I mean, all those things kind of go into helping us be a successful business. And sometimes it does. I've just got a track record, and we've tracked everything.
Well, frankly, that's why there's so much turnover too in the industry. I mean, we see contractors who are here one day and gone the next, but that's exactly why they haven't had the experience with how much does it cost to build this with my labor. How much? I mean, where am I at? They get pricing generalized. They kind of hear about it, you know, and lower their pricing just to win bids, get bids.
Yeah, right. And that's their main selling point.
And as soon as
they were cheaper.
That's right. And as soon as they come back to running the numbers, they realize, okay, well, I'm actually not making any money on these jobs, and they're out of business within a couple of years. And then you can't go back to warranty anything. You know, if you do have issues with your patio down the road with it.
In the last 10 years, I've seen a lot of
turnover.
a lot of turnover.
There's a lot of turnover.
We're grateful to be here still at 10 years. So.
And don't get me wrong, there's some good companies out there that are doing hardscape work in Kansas City that are great.
Yeah.
I'm glad we are
one of them.
Yeah. And frankly, the track record speaks to that. So.
Yeah. Another thing I want to leave you with is sometimes I hear that we're too expensive, and you know, I often ask the question: is the contractor that's working at your house have work comp? I find it, especially when working with a couple subcontractors in my past, and especially working with some of the people in our industry, I'm finding out that they don't have work comp, which is extremely scary to me. And you know, there's a lot of risk in running a business, for one. Two, if one of your employees actually gets hurt on the job site, I didn't know this until we had a recent accident on one of our job sites. It was very minimal. The guy was walking across, or one of our employees was walking across the yard and actually fell in like a mole hole and rolled his ankle.
Yeah.
Just rolled his ankle.
Done that before.
Well, he broke his ankle and had to have surgery. $52,000 later.
Well,
$52,000 later
For a broken ankle.
for a broken ankle. Thank God we had work comp.
Right.
Little did I know going through this entire process that if your contractor does not have work comp, and the homeowner oftentimes doesn't realize this, but if you hired me to work at your house and the contractor does not have work comp, do you know that the homeowner is responsible at that
Really?
point? Yeah.
yeah, I didn't know that.
So the homeowner is responsible for, they would have had to pay that bill?
The homeowner is the general.
So they are then liable for the medical bill and all that?
Yeah, so the
Wow.
course of action, the way it was brought up to me, the course of action that would have happened is that they would have went to the, he had to go to the doctor, obviously.
Yeah.
He had to go to the emergency room or wherever, but they would have figured out, hey, where did this happen at?
Right.
Well, it happened at work. Well, they would have came after me. Well, I don't have work comp, so they would have came after me individually, but since I didn't have work comp, now they're gonna go to whoever hired the contractor, which, when you think about it, when a homeowner hires a contractor to work at their house,
They become
they're
the
the
general.
general. They're the general.
Yeah.
So if I don't have it as a business, now they're going to come after me personally, but they're also going to go after the person who hired the company to do the work for.
Yeah.
So,
So
So it's funny you
$10,000.
brought that up because we have this contractor checklist that we just came up with.
Oh,
Yes.
And here's some of those points right here.
Nice.
And I think this speaks to the fact that we do compete with a lot of small companies that may be cutting some of these things out.
yes.
Yeah.
And that could be the difference, the $500 difference in our prices if there is one.
Are you planning on giving that to the client?
I think we
Yes.
are going to be handing this out in this folder, but it just hits on those things. The contractor needs to have general liability insurance, automobile insurance, workman's comp for all the employees, and then it has some other things on there that are real important that,
It's a great checklist. If you're going to
Oh,
use
so-
it,
yeah.
you can use
every
it
homeowner should go
to
through
grade.
this.
We understand that 2 to 3 bids are always taken on a project. We get that, but we've developed a project to make sure it's a checklist for you to make sure that everybody's apples to apples and has the correct credentials to be actually
Well, it's not- and it's not
mindful of the bet.
And it's not even as much apples to apples as it is just one to make sure they're not liable for some of
Yeah,
this
you
stuff.
want to make sure that you're not
Yeah.
liable, especially if you're having a
Yeah.
patio put in. And
A $10,000 patio turns into a $60,000 job. And
could you imagine that?
If we lose the business, we want to lose it to a company who's doing all this
Yes,
stuff.
yes. Because
Not
then
to-
we'll probably be apples to apples at that
Right.
point.
Right, that's the main point. So this is a great checklist.
Great
Good job putting
checklist.
that together, yeah.
Yeah.
Looks good.
So we hope you enjoyed this video. We hope it was educational. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Again, I'm Zach Hinkle, owner of Hinkle Hardscapes.
And I'm Ken Gibson, senior designer.
I'm Tom Harvey, hardscape designer.
And we're looking forward to the opportunity to serve as your hardscape professional.